To ensure that we've got variety on this podcast, today is going to be about something a little bit different, because the previous few podcasts that I've released have been focusing on the talks that I've been doing in schools. If you didn't see any of those, please go check them out. But today we're going to be talking about the big topic, the emotive topic, the topic that gets everyone mad, and that is about offenders. Now, the reason why that this is in some respect the most important part of this discussion that we have is because it's the offenders that are committing the offence, and if we can do something about that, whatever that be, then the offence never happens in the first place. Because very interestingly, I think about this a lot, I can go into schools every day talking to thousands of students about please come forward if something's happening to you. But what's the problem with that? Is that when they come forward, it means the crime has already been committed, and actually it's too late. If we're serious about prevention and stopping this crime from happening in the first place, it's about the offender where we need to concentrate the discussion on. But if you've been following me for some time, you will know that every time I try to open up this discussion, I get hate, I get attacks. But that's not going to stop me from doing it, because I believe it to be the correct method forward. It's the source of the problem, and we need to address it as a society. Now, I've come across this particular video. I haven't actually watched any of it, maybe just the first 10 seconds just to make sure the quality of it was good enough. It's from Lad Bible, so of course it's going to be good enough. This woman's story I've seen in quite a few major news outlets, Lad Bible, some national newspapers as well. I wish these media outlets would report on my story, you know. She's getting lots of exposure, and let's check out what she's talking about. I don't want to spoil any of it. Let's get into it.
You can't sleep, can't eat. I couldn't get the image out of my vision. This very pale little blonde boy, and just however many seconds it was that I saw of that film playing over and over.
Okay, for those that are listening on your podcast app, hi to you. For those that are watching on YouTube, obviously you have the visual here of what we're watching along. For your podcast listeners, this is a lady who is talking about her story, and the title that just came up on the screen was Ex-Partner of a Paedophile. So this woman was married to somebody who was living a double life, and this is going to be really interesting for us to understand.
My mother moved to Devon when I was in my late teens, and so I finished schooling there. Met my son's father, and we were together for 17 years, but we went our own sort of separate ways. We just grew apart, really, and separated.
And how did you meet Pete?
So I met him through Plenty of Fish. Anyway, he seemed great because he was really into wildlife and sports and, you know, outdoorsy kind of stuff. And I just thought he sounds lovely. And we met up in a local sort of beauty spot where there's a really nice cafe, and just did a 20-minute coffee on the first meet. He was a really nice guy, intelligent, and just a gentle giant. You know, he was a big chap, but he seemed really gentle, really soft with it. Opened doors. You know, the conversation was always very nice. It was never anything nasty. There just didn't seem anything nasty about him. He was just always very thoughtful, very laid back, respectful, and just, you know, came across as being a really gentle person.
Shall I tell you what's really interesting? Because we all know what's coming, don't we? We all know what's coming. She's then going to turn the story of where she found out that he was a paedophile. But I do the same with my own story about really pushing the point to break the stereotypes. She's explaining a gentle man who was kind and thoughtful and intelligent, and he turned out to be an offender. Something that the media doesn't portray and something that we don't think of. And with my own story, I always really try to push the point. Maybe I push it a little bit too much sometimes. I feel that I was a child who was being sexually abused and I wasn't saying anything and I wasn't showing any signs. I wasn't that stereotypical child victim that you would look out for or think that you would notice. And I feel like she's trying to do that here too, but very useful, very useful.
How did you feel like coming away from that first meeting?
Kind of excited. I was like, yeah, he's seems like a really great bloke. You know, his family he talked about them. They seemed lovely. They seemed into the same kind of things as my family and horses and all kinds. And yeah, I felt quite excited.
How did the relationship progress from there, Rosie?
We sort of met maybe twice a week at first, and it would be sort of we'd go for a meal or a walk. We walked quite a lot, so we'd go for a walk or a meal or something. So it started slowly, and he was really respectful, and I thought that's really nice that he's so respectful, doesn't sort of, you know, try and rush things or make a move, or I just thought that was great. We discussed sort of, you know, maybe we should move in together. It was just, you know, a few sort of random conversations at first, and then he lived on a farm. Well, not a farm, but he lived on a place where they had horses, and he used to look after the horses in exchange for the accommodation. So it kind of made sense for me to move in with him. So we sort of discussed that, and you know, I'd been to work with him a lot and seen where he worked. I'd met his friends, I'd met his family. Everything just seemed so lovely, and just like it felt natural.
And at that point, I suppose, what was the relationship like between him and your son?
They didn't really have a relationship. I mean, my relationship with my son has always been incredibly close. And so that continued. My son doesn't need a father. He's got a father, a really good father. It didn't really matter, you know, and my relationship with Pete was, to me, a separate thing anyway.
Okay, so this is a stepfather to her son. That's a bit of information that I didn't know. And I do wonder now if this man has actually abused her son, whether that's a story or whether I'm pretty sure I read one of the headlines, which was about finding images on his hard drive. But yeah, this is going to get pretty interesting.
And then tell me a little bit about the day that your life changed forever, Rosie.
So by this point, we'd moved house and we had our own place, and we'd left the property where we were minding the horses. And we had a home office where we'd keep sort of, you know, computer and desk and bits and pieces, a shared office that everybody had access to. It was mainly me and Pete. Well, it was me and Pete that used it. And I had a card arrive that morning. I wanted to activate the card. We had a card reader in the office. So I just went in to grab the card reader, opened the drawer where it normally was. It wasn't in there. So I looked in the other drawers. It wasn't in there. So I thought, what's he done with that? You know, thinking, you know, it's probably under a piece of paperwork or in the filing tray or something. He's thrown it somewhere. Great. So I started looking through. I couldn't find it. And the more I couldn't find it, the more annoyed I got. So I started looking. There were a couple of boxes. So I lifted the lid of the first one, lifted the lid of the second one, and there it was, in with a whole load of electrical cables and stuff. Grabbed it, walked off. When I got to where I was going, looked in the back, and there was something in there, and I thought, well, that's a bit odd. So I pulled it out, and it was an SD card, I think you call them, the tiny little cards that go into whatever. So I thought, it's a bit strange. So I put it into the iPad, the Apple iPad, and this box popped up, bottom left, and oh
my goodness.
And there was a small child there. So I ripped it out of the computer and sat there and just thought, of course it's not. That's just absolutely mental. That's just ridiculous. So I put it back in, and this time a box popped up with a load of titles. And all of the titles, every single one was something, pretty horrendous. And I just thought, oh my God, this is actually what I thought it was. And I think I must have clicked on the first one. Because, you can't, you've got to know, haven't you? You just, curiosity and having to know. I clicked on the first one and another couple of seconds of that. And I was like, God, can't actually believe.
Okay. Let's just take a minute here. Let's just take a minute here to think about the different feelings that you would have if you were the wife of a man and you found this in the office space that you shared together. Let's just go down that journey for a moment, because it's not, I don't think it's immediately straightforward. Because first of all, surely, right, one of the first things you're going to be thinking is, how did this get here? Is it his or is it not his? Or maybe you'd be like, of course it's his. This is our only space. This is the space that me and him share. So of course it's his. But if you've been married to someone for a number of years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I can't remember how long she'd been married to him at this point. But did she even mention that she's married to him? I can't remember. But somebody who you trust entirely and you would never think would be engaging in content like this, viewing content like this, having content like this. And then all of a sudden, your world comes crumbling down. Now, the reason why I'm interested in this perspective and for us to go down this journey in our own head is because it is making me think about the man that did this to me when I was a child, and the fact that even though I tried to prosecute him through the criminal justice system but failed, and I knocked on his door and him and his wife contacted the police, they arrived, they arrested me, and I was taken to the station, and he took me to magistrate's court and prosecuted me for doing that. His wife has stood by him for the whole of this time, and she believes him. She believes that I am some madman turning up at their house trying to prosecute him for something that happened when I was a child that I've made up in my own head. And I've thought about that a lot, and you may immediately be angry at the wife of the man that did this to me when I was a child, but I believe they'd been married for like 25 years, got 2 kids, so and they're older teenagers now. So for me to come and bring my part, what I'm saying about him to the table, really rips her world apart and everything she ever believed to be true. As a human being, psychologically, I don't believe, in my uninformed or uneducated opinion, that the human brain can just be like, suddenly think of this man you've been in love with and reared children with over the last 25 years to be a criminal of such a heinous crime. I don't think you can just make that switch straight away. That's why I'm asking this question. If you put yourself in the position of this woman who's just found this SD card in the study and has put it into the iPad and is seeing these, like she watched a couple of seconds of these videos and saw the titles, are you immediately going to come to the conclusion that your man is guilty? I just think it's interesting from a human psyche perspective to like, and I'm asking you to really put yourself in the shoes of this woman. Really put yourself maybe even in the shoes of the woman that I've just explained in my own personal story, because I think immediately knee-jerk reaction is you would behave in a certain way, but maybe actually in real life you wouldn't. Just interesting things to really think about.
Yeah, you just can't believe it. Can't believe what you're seeing. You can't see that and ever forget what you've seen. It never leaves you.
Poor woman. Hang on. I just want to, like, if you can't see it, if you're listening to this, you can't see it, but if you just saw the emotion on her face, I believe that facial expression that she just pulled, I'm going to rewind it a little bit. One second. Let's just watch that again.
It never leaves you.
Right. That's a serious facial expression there. Like her body language in her face, sorry. Her face language? Would that be? Is that a thing? The facial expression that she was giving. All of a sudden, that moment wasn't about her ex-partner and the crime. All of a sudden, that was about her never ever being able to get what she saw on those videos out of her head. She's suffering. She's suffering after seeing that horrific scene in those videos of young children in sexual abuse situations with adults. We don't know. Obviously, she didn't describe what it was that she saw, but all of a sudden, that part of what we're investigating here really was about that. It was not about the ex-partner. Now, I just want to say a couple of more things about that. Maybe I'll leave this till a little bit later, but my hat goes off to all the police officers, all the child abuse investigation teams across the country, across the world, in fact, that when they find this type of content, illegal content online, they have to watch it to categorize it and prepare it for the courts to make a judgment on. They actually have to watch this content day in, day out. And then when they finish their shift on that day, they clock off and go home as if nothing's happened. My hat goes off to anyone that does a job like that, because I certainly couldn't do it. I wonder if you think you could do it. And this is something where we should be proud of those people. They are unsung heroes. Just to get prosecutions through the court system, they have to watch, I'm going to say it again, they have to watch that content from start to finish, categorize it, and then create a report of some sort to try to get the criminals that produced it or that are involved in it prosecuted. Thank you for doing the job that you do. I couldn't think of anything harder.
I ripped it out after having seen it anywhere between 2 and 5 seconds. Probably wasn't as long as 5 seconds. I don't think you need to see it for that long to realise what it is. I think I went on to autopilot. I just knew I had to do something. I knew I had to phone the police.
Okay.
So I picked up my phone, walked to the front of the house, and I had to speak to someone first. I had to connect with someone first. I knew I really had to connect with someone who I loved, who loved me first. Sounds weird, but I had to. So I phoned, I was studying to be a hypnotherapist at the time. So I phoned my tutor and said, I've just found child pornography in my house, child abuse in my house. And I know I need to phone the police, but I need someone to tell me I'm doing the right thing. And he said, yeah, you are doing the right thing. I said, okay, thank you. Put the phone down, phoned the police.
Would you have wanted to speak to your husband before calling to the police first, I wonder? Or would you call the police immediately? I think if I was in her shoes, I want to confront my husband about it before I called the police. I just feel like that's what my brain would have wanted to do. Just one other thing before we continue to move forward. She did mention the term child pornography. We don't use the term child pornography anymore. This is actually a recent video released recently on YouTube. So she's got the terminology wrong. It has changed. It's changed And we don't call it pornography because pornography indicates that the people who are acting within the film or video are consenting. And children under the age of 16 here in the UK cannot give consent to any type of sexual interaction. We protect them with this law, saying that if they are under 16, you cannot interact with them in a sexual way on any level, and that's why we don't call it child pornography. We actually call it child sexual abuse material. I don't know how good that terminology is right now, but we are in the Stone Ages with all of this, and we're still finding our feet with the words that we use.
And they were brilliant. They just stayed on the phone with me, and I said, he's due home any minute. I do not want him in this house. And she said, lock all of your doors.
Wow.
We're sending someone up right now. And she said, I'll stay on the phone with you. And yeah, she just stayed on the phone and said, what have you found? How did you find it? Blah, blah. And And the police turned up, and almost at the same time, Pete turned up, and he was knocking on the door saying, Rosie, Rosie, let me in. He must have thought I was in the garden, because then he took his phone out and phoned me. And I've still got that voicemail on my phone that I've never listened to. And then the police turned up, and they took him sort of just slightly away from the door, and one of the policemen knocked and said, can you let me in, please? So I let him in, and they arrested him right in front of the front porch, and we watched. And the policeman said, he's as cool as a cucumber. And I said, yeah, he always is. I said, he's really laid back. And he said, well, not many people are laid back when they're being arrested for something like this.
How was that experience watching the arrest for you, Rosie?
It's confusing. It's so mixed, because there's this person that you have been in love with, and although that is almost destroyed immediately, when you find something like this, that love is, it's like it's made of ice and someone's taken a hammer to it. It shatters. And it ends. It just ends. And you know that, but still there are all these emotions and feelings and things that you're fighting. When we watched him being arrested, it was like watching television. I think I was a bit just numb. You have no processing time at all for anything that's happening. It's all racing and racing in your head, and everything happening so quickly. He was arrested and gone. And then you're on to the next thing. They want to come in and they're searching your house.
And what did they find in the house when they searched?
In his office, there were lots of memory cards. I don't know whether there was anything on them. I don't know what they found, because they found a lot of videos and images from category A to C, I think.
Okay, for some information, these categories are what the police will use to determine the severity, in air quotes, of a particular image or video where a minor is being sexually abused or raped. And category A is of, and I don't want to get this wrong, so I really should search it. Just give me a second. Okay, so I found something, and shall I tell you what's really weird emotionally, just as I searched, trying to find out how they determine the categories, is I just had to be really careful with my words in my Google search, because I just was going to put child sexual abuse images and videos category A, but I don't want to see any category A images, obviously. That's not what I'm searching for. I don't think Google would have made that assumption either. It could have also just thrown me a response saying, I don't know what it would do, but I didn't like any of that. So what did I search? I searched, how do police categorize CSAM, which is child sexual abuse material. That's a better way of me searching for it. My heart kind of skipped a beat there. So I found a government website, and the way that they grade child sexual abuse images, I'm going to put this on the screen for those watching on YouTube. Category A, images involving penetrative sexual activity with an animal or sadism. Category B, images involving non-penetrative sexual activity. Category C, other indecent images not falling into categories A or B, but it must not depict any sexual activity. So there you have the three categories. She mentioned that there was category A to C, so across the whole range of that. And as I mentioned again, those police officers, those investigators working in these child abuse prevention teams who have to actually watch this content to categorize it, I just wonder how they live a life outside of work. If you saw something category A, images involving penetrative sexual activity with an animal or sadism, when it comes to children, how are you going to return back to your life when you clock off from work that night? That's I just don't understand how you can. I hope for teams like that, there's intense support for all personnel working in that department. My goodness. Okay, back to the video.
Category A is the worst form of indecent image that you can get.
Do you know how many images and videos there were?
I think it was around 600, and a lot of them were category A.
Wow.
Can you talk me through the conversation that you had with your son?
It's just bizarre because your brain is literally rushing and rushing and rushing. You can't keep
Thinking, surely, did he touch my son?
up with yourself with all the thoughts coming in and out. And I just thought, I've got to call him down and ask him.
Poor woman.
Huh. I could see him standing there on the stairs. He was about, I think he was about 15. And he came down and sort of leant on the banister and said, what's up? And I said, I've had to phone the police because I found something in the office. And he just sort of looked at me a bit confused, really. And I said, I need to ask you if Pete's ever touched you. And I said, has he ever talked to you inappropriately? Has he ever done anything that's made you feel awkward or worried? Or he said, no. He said, no, not at all. I didn't really ever do anything with him. So he was fine about it. He was all teenagery and laid back and cool. But to have to ask your child that is, I'm so grateful that I got the answer that I got. I'm so grateful that I wasn't one of the ones, who had to deal with actually, yeah, there have been times. I'm so grateful.
There may be some people thinking right now that his response is almost, she's relieved that was the response from him. And as a parent myself, I also would be absolutely just thanking the world that he hadn't touched my son, and my son is telling me that. But as we know, and I'm not trying to make any type of assumption or lean towards negativity. It's not my intention, but I, as somebody who understands quite a bit about speaking out, especially as a male, if I was in her position, I would not be thinking that that was 100% guarantee. I would be still having probably around 20% of my attention reserved for thinking. No, that's the wrong words. I would have 20% of my attention in the years to come just on the fact that maybe my son will talk to me about this later when he's in his mid-20s, which is when I started speaking out. If somebody asked me at 15 whether that man had touched me before, I also would have said no. And I would have continued to say no until I was ready to actually say something. I just want to put that complication in there. I'm not saying that's her son's story. That's not what I'm saying. It's very, very complicated, and we need to consider all angles all the time.
What were those first hours and days like after the arrest?
Numb, pain, questions, just questions. Why didn't I know? What's wrong with me? Why me? And you can't sleep, can't eat. I couldn't get the image out of my vision. I tried to do so many things to distract myself. I tried to put on a really gritty film, you can't focus on anything. The only thing that was in my vision was this very pale little blonde boy. And just however many seconds it was that I saw of that film playing over and over in my vision, and then you've got to address how you feel about yourself. What do you do when you look in the mirror and all you can see is just someone disgusting? Because that's what I saw. I just wanted to scrub myself and bleach myself, and I just felt absolutely gross.
Okay, so this woman's story is not going to be that uncommon. The reason why I say that is because we have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of offenders just in this country alone. I'm here in England. We have, the last time I remember hearing, there was, I think, 80,000 people on the sex offenders register. Obviously, not all of them have offended against a minor, but let's say a third of them have offended against a minor. Just for math's sake, that's 25,000 offenders. Lots of them will have partners, unsuspecting partners. And for anyone that sees this video and thinks, I would be able to tell if my husband or my boyfriend or my partner was doing something like that and lived that life behind closed doors, I will say to you, you would not be able to tell. The stereotypes need to be thrown well out the window. I believe that we are in the process of doing that as a society. And, if you saw one of my reaction videos that I released on my YouTube channel and in podcast format too, a few months back, which was 40-year-old man arranges to meet 14-year-old girl, you will see that, you know, these people are not suspecting members of society because, you know, dare I say it, let me think about how to word this. They lead a double life, and on one side of their life, they are contributing person, member of society, maybe good husbands, maybe good fathers, maybe good workers, but then they have a deviant side, a dark side, and they practice that where no one's looking, behind closed doors. So they can lead this double life. And this is what we are seeing here. And I can completely sympathise with her now blaming herself in some way. And I wonder why that is. Maybe she wants to put the anger somewhere. Maybe she's trying to find reason. Maybe she just hasn't got a clue where she's going with this. And it's just erratic, erratic thought processes racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour in her head right now.
Because he touched me. I let him touch me. You know, it... How could I have let someone like that touch me? He was attracted to children. You know, it knocks your confidence. It knocks your trust in people. And then you've got the whole thing of, what do you tell people? Do you phone up and say, I can't come to work today because I've just found out that the love of my life is a paedophile?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of course you don't. What do you tell people? How much do you tell people? Or don't you tell people?
Obviously, the aftermath of you discovering those images and essentially you and your son being kind of victims of this crime, what was the support that you were offered after that? And were the police and people around you supportive of your experience of seeing those images? How did the police help you in that time?
Well, it's funny you should say, you know, you and your son were victims. I don't think of it that way at all. I think that we obviously are hugely affected by what happened at the time. I don't consider myself a victim. I consider myself somebody who has been through a very traumatic experience and was lucky enough to have a lot of friends who were able to help her.
Okay, let's talk about this. Oh my goodness, do you know what? I am just resisting stopping this video so many times. I just wanted to stop it in like 3 different places before this. I could re-record this whole thing and say completely different things at different points, but I'm just trying to stay disciplined here and not stop it too many times. Would you consider her and her son a victim? There is a question to you. I would like you to answer it in the comments section. If you haven't commented already, please write your comment and tell me what you think. Do you think her and her son are a victim? And if you'd like to, write why. Please write why. Obviously, we are looking for great conversations in the comments section, and I'm just trying to think about what my answer to that is. And, you know, like, without hearing her explanation further on the point of why she considers herself not a victim and the fact that she's been through a traumatic, that she's just someone that went through a traumatic situation, but wouldn't that be the definition of a victim? Somebody has done something that has led you to experience trauma. I would say that means you're a victim, surely. The fact that she had to watch that video, she's a victim of that piece of content. I don't know. The child in the piece of content is the victim of that piece of content, of course. Actually, you know, like when I just stopped the video there, I thought that was a simple question to answer, but now I don't think it's that simple. Let's see what more she's got to say on it.
So I don't consider myself to be a victim. The children, they're the victims. And that is exactly how the police see it. And that is exactly how the police phrase it. that evening, after I'd given my statement, they said, we can put you in touch with victim support. I'm not sure that they'll be able to help you because effectively you're not a victim.
Wow.
So that was it. There was no support. I don't think the police have the resources. They don't even have the resources to process the amount of indecent images that they're picking up. It took quite a while to process.
Correct.
At the time, the police said to me that they are arresting, this was in May 2020. At the time, he said we're arresting about 450 people a month.
Wow.
For viewing indecent images. 400.
Wow. Under-resourced. The police are under-resourced to tackle the scale of this problem. Why are they under-resourced? Let me tell you just very quickly, because no one's seen the images and videos. If people actually saw the images and videos like this woman has seen, then people would be donating money to the police to sort this problem out. The government would be forced to pump money into the funding of these teams that tackle this problem. If we actually saw the images and videos, I've talked about this before on my channels. Some people don't like the thought of this, but until we face the seriousness of the crime, the government aren't going to fund it. Resource isn't going to be thrown that way. The only way we can see the seriousness of the crime is if we were actually had to see what is actually going on online.
50. So the knock-on effect of that, how many mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, work colleagues are just about to find out that their best mate, their brother, their sister, their, mum, dad, whatever, has been arrested for this crime.
Wow.
I had no idea that the case was going to court. I had a message come through on Messenger from someone that I didn't even know. I think it was an ex of Pete's. And I had a literally just message pop up on my phone. And it said something along the lines of disgusted to see he only got such and such. And I had to pull the car over. I was shaking, thinking, what's going on? What? Opened it up and read that message from her, Googled, and saw that, the newspapers, everybody else knew before me that he'd been to court and been sentenced.
And what was Pete's conviction?
So he was sentenced to 9 months, suspended for 2 years. So no time at all. He is on the sex offenders register, which is great as long as you keep your own name, because then, wherever you go, people can check to see if you're on the sex offenders register. Claire's law and Sarah's law, these are laws brought in to protect people, to protect men and women from getting involved with somebody they shouldn't be involved with. Those laws are put there, absolutely amazing laws put there to protect people. Totally worthless, because sex offenders could change their names. The law has changed slightly. Unfortunately, as with most things, there are some loopholes.
Recent reports from the National Crime Agency suggest that 80% of people in the UK caught with images of children being sexually abused avoid going to prison. How does that statistic make you feel, Rosie?
Let me tell you how that makes me feel. We are failing today's generation. If the protection of today's generation, today's minors, today's children, today's teenagers is our utmost priority, then those sentences are embarrassing and we should feel embarrassed about it. 80% of people don't see a prison sentence. So what kind of deterrent is it for somebody that's feeling tempted to click that button, to go on there, to collect those images? They don't care. There's no deterrent for them because there's no punishment for this. We should feel embarrassed about the state of this situation. We really should. I feel it just invokes anger in me. Again, I'm going to direct you to a podcast I released a couple of months ago on Hugh Edwards, which is a BBC reporter who got caught with images on his phone. And I did a full review of a video talking about that. Please go and see it. I forget the name of it. I'm just going to let you search it. I will, when I edit this video, I'll pop up the thumbnail on the YouTube channel. I'll put the description in the description, actually, so you can go find that, because I give all of my reasoning of why we should have stronger prison sentences for this particular crime, and why, if you are a collector or a viewer of this type of imagery, videos or images, then you are contributing to the sexual abuse of children. I explain it all there. I'm not going to do that here. Please go and check that out after you finish engaging with this podcast.
Sick. So after I rebuilt my life a little bit, I realised that there wasn't any support. You know, I looked around for groups, I hunted, I tried to find ways of getting in touch with other people because I felt I needed that connection. Nothing. Couldn't find a group, couldn't find anything, anywhere. So I thought, right, I'll set my own up then. So I set up a CIC, community interest company called Survive and Thrive, specifically for anyone who'd been affected by a sex offender. So many of these people talk to no one.
Wow.
Because they can't. They won't talk to anyone. They won't even go and see a counsellor. They won't talk to their doctor about it because they're scared it'll go onto their records and then their whole town, village might know. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about how it feels to have been in love with a paedophile. You know, I have been called all kinds of things. And people have made their mind up that I must have known. They wouldn't let anyone find out. They have become master manipulators. They are good at what they do. But, you know, having discovered something like that, you never stop asking yourself questions, ever. You never stop beating yourself up. You know, I quite frankly, I don't need to be beaten up by everyone around me. I don't need to be judged and condemned by everyone around me. I've done it myself, thank you.
Wow.
Why have you decided to tell people your story?
I want to bring it out into the open because this is something that people will not talk about. And until we bring this out into the open and we can talk about it, we can't expect to make any progression with stopping or making a dent in the amount of, you know, child abuse material that's out there.
Yep.
You know, the point of this, you know, the whole point of this story is not me at all. It's not even Pete. It's not the point. The point is the children. We have a duty to protect them. And that's why I talk.
Come on. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 links in the description below, in the show notes. The first link is going to be about the 40-year-old man who arranged to meet the 14-year-old girl. The reason why I'm putting that link in the description is for us to further highlight that these stereotypes is not what these offenders actually look like or behave like or even who they are. The second link that I'm going to put in the description below is the Hugh Edwards BBC reporter who got caught with images on his phone, and I do a full recap of the complications around that and the way we are not punishing these people and letting them get off free and why that's a big problem. And the third link that I'm going to put in the description is the Survive and Thrive CIC that she has created. Good on her for making a change and making a stand. I opened this podcast saying that I wanted to add some variety today and to begin talking about offenders. So we have seen here that the problem has come with this man, Pete, who has committed an offence by collecting this illegal imagery of children in real situations, being recorded in real life situations, being sexually abused, and using that for his sexual gratification, his perverse sexual gratification. It's illegal, we don't allow it, we must protect the children. But as I mentioned when I opened this podcast, one of my interests with talking about offenders is the fact that they are the first step of the created trauma. Let me explain what I mean by that, because I don't think I got my words very, very aligned there. They are the ones that create the trauma. That's obvious. We can all see that. But they commit the crime for the first time at some point. And now I want to explore why they're committing the crime, what led them to commit the crime, and where we as a society can intervene to maximize the chance that they never commit the crime in the first place. Did Pete become turned on by children along his life, or has that always been something inside of him? Was he born like this, or did society turn him this way? No, not society turn him this way. That's kind of blaming society for the way that it is structured. Let me reword it. Was Pete, and you can see how difficult this is for me. And I talk about these things all the time, but it's still difficult. Was Pete born like this, or did something in his life make him this way? Because if he was born like this, then we would have to come to the conclusion that out of take an amount of babies, 1,000 babies, you're always going to have one or two offenders that get turned on by children, and we can't do anything about it. But if something in his life made him this way, then what was that thing, and how can we step in at some point to ensure that doesn't escalate to him committing a crime against a child? These are all just thoughts in my head that we need to have a discussion about. You heard me also talk at the start of this that every time I approach this topic, every time I try to bring it up, especially on my social media platforms, I get attacks and I get hate in the comment section. That's not nice for me to receive. I don't like reading it. It's hurtful to me because I have good intentions with this work. We're talking about the prevention of this crime. That is our main concern. Talking about offenders does not somehow give them attention that they don't deserve. It doesn't it's not a wrong thing to do. They are the source of the problem. We are not talking, and look at me racking up all the things that I know potentially people will come at me for. We are not talking about a cure. We're not talking about fixing these people. We're just talking about reaching them to maximize the chances that they never commit the crime in the first place. Then we have no victims. Then we have no wives like this woman who found out the person she was in love with was committing this crime. We need to do something about this as a society. I hope that was engaging enough for you to stick around until the end. If you are still here, please hit those like buttons. Please leave those comments. Please rate this podcast. Please share it with a friend. Please put it in your WhatsApp groups. Please share it with parents that you know. Please ask people questions about it. Generate a conversation, because the algorithms don't work for me. We are talking about a topic that these social media platforms don't want to engage with, so my content doesn't get spread on people's news feeds. You don't find my content on their home feeds. It's not spreading it to new accounts. I need your help with this, please. I think that's enough for us for today. I hope you found at least some food for thought in this, and I will see you for another podcast very soon. Thank you.